He could have asked God for riches. He could have asked for long life. He could have asked for the death of his enemies. But Solomon asked for one thing, and heaven responded in a way that shook the world. What if God appeared to you tonight and asked, "Ask me anything. What shall I give you?" Would you ask for money, fame, power, or something that could change your life forever? Solomon became the wisest man who ever lived. But his story doesn't end in victory. It ends with a warning. How does the wisest king in history still lose his way? This is the story of Solomon, the wisest man ever lived.
Jerusalem glowed like a crown under the morning sun. The city was still waking when the sound of mourning drifted through the palace halls, soft weeping, hushed prayers, quiet footsteps. The great King David was gone. The shepherd boy who became Israel's champion, the warrior king who united the tribes, had breathed his last. And now the weight of an entire nation, its promises, its dangers, its future, settled on the shoulders of a young man, Solomon. He stood beneath towering stone pillars, staring down at his own hands as if they belonged to someone else. In the silence of the royal chamber, he could still hear his father's final instructions, spoken with the strength of a man who knew he was stepping into eternity.
Be strong, therefore, and prove yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God.
1 Kings chapter 2, verse 2-3. Solomon's throat tightened. He knew what Israel expected. A king like David, a lion, a legend, a man of war. But Solomon was not David, and he feared that the throne beneath him would not feel like a seat of honor, but a cliff edge. The crown came with enemies, some loud, some hidden. There were men who still carried ambition like a concealed dagger. Old rivals who watched the palace gates like wolves, waiting to see whether Solomon's reign would begin in strength or in hesitation. Solomon learned quickly that peace is not the absence of danger. It is danger held back by the hand of God. He walked carefully at first, taking counsel, steadying the kingdom, tying up loose ends that could rip the nation apart. And yet, even with the throne secure, his heart remained unsettled. Night after night, he would climb to the palace roof and stare at the stars over Jerusalem.
Lord,
He whispered,
I don't know if I can do this.
Not long after his reign began, Solomon made a journey to Gibeon, where the great tabernacle and altar stood in those days. The air smelled of dust and sacrifice. Priests moved like shadows near the flames. The people watched their new king with a cautious kind of hope. Solomon stood before the altar and offered sacrifices, not because it was a performance, but because his heart was desperate for God's favor. That night, after the fire had died down and the camp had fallen quiet, Solomon slept. And in the stillness of the dark, God came to him, not as thunder, not as earthquake, but as a voice that split his soul open with one question.
Ask, what shall I give you?
1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5. Solomon's breath caught in his chest. This was not a dream like ordinary dreams. This felt like standing on holy ground. He began to speak, and the words poured out with honesty. No polished speeches, no royal pride.
You have shown great mercy to your servant David, and you have given him a son to sit on his throne. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king, but I am a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in.
1 Kings chapter 3, verse 6-7. He confessed what kings rarely confessed.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Then he said something that would echo through history like a bell struck by heaven.
Therefore give to your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil.
1 Kings chapter 3, verse 9. He did not ask for long life. He did not ask for riches. He did not ask for the death of his enemies. He asked for wisdom. And the Lord, who sees the motives behind the request, was pleased.
Because you have asked this thing, and have not asked long life for yourself, nor have asked riches for yourself, but have asked to discern justice. Behold, I have done according to your words. See, I have given you a wise and understanding heart.
1 Kings chapter 3, verse 11 to 12. Then God added what Solomon hadn't requested.
I have also given you what you have not asked, both riches and honor.
1 Kings chapter 3, verse 13. Solomon woke up trembling. He returned to Jerusalem a different man. The throne didn't feel lighter, but his heart felt steadier, as if the invisible hand of God had rested on his mind. Soon the wisdom God gave was tested publicly. One day, 2 women came into the king's court. They were not queens, not nobles, not women the palace would normally notice. But they were desperate. They stood before the throne with tangled grief in their eyes, and one of them spoke with shaking hands.
"Oh, my lord, this woman and I dwell in the same house, and I gave birth while she was in the house. Then it happened the 3rd day after I had given birth, that this woman also gave birth. And she arose in the middle of the night and took my son from my side, and laid her dead son in my bosom."
1 Kings chapter 3, verse 17 to 20. The other woman snapped back, voice sharp like broken glass.
"No, but the living one is my son, and the dead one is your son."
1 Kings 3:22. The courtroom filled with murmurs. 2 women, 1 living baby, 1 dead child. 2 claims, no witnesses. Solomon looked at them both. And in that moment, he did not see 2 arguing voices. He saw 1 true mother and 1 lie desperate to survive. His eyes narrowed. Then Solomon said words that made the room go cold.
Bring me a sword.
1 Kings chapter 3, verse 24. A sword. The gods brought it, its blade catching light like a flash of judgment. Solomon lifted his hand.
Divide the living child in 2, and give half to one and half to the other.
The room froze in horror. But Solomon wasn't seeking blood. He was seeking the truth. The real mother broke instantly, love tearing through her like lightning.
"Oh, my lord, give her the living child, and by no means kill him."
The other woman, cold, bitter, said,
"Let him be neither mine nor yours, but divide him."
Solomon's voice thundered through the court.
Give the first woman the living child, and by no means kill him. She is his mother.
1 Kings chapter 3, verse 27. A gasp rolled through the people like a wave. And scripture says, "All Israel heard, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to administer justice." From that day, Solomon's name carried weight, not because he was feared like a warrior, but because he was trusted like a judge. Yet Solomon's greatest work was still ahead. David had long desired to build a house for the Lord, but he had been a man of war. The task was given to Solomon, the Prince of Peace. Solomon stood on Mount Moriah, where the presence of God had been honored for generations, and he looked out over the land.
My father wanted to build you a house.
He whispered.
Let me do it right.
He gathered cedar from Lebanon, massive stones, skilled laborers, gold, bronze, and craftsmen. The building rose slowly, magnificently, every measurement deliberate, every carving intentional. And when the temple was completed, Solomon assembled Israel. Priests carried the Ark of the Covenant into the most holy place. The worship began, sacrifices, singing, trumpets, cymbals. And then the glory came. A cloud filled the house of the Lord, thick and holy, so that the priests could not continue ministering, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. Solomon stood before the altar and lifted his hands to heaven. He prayed, not like a performer, but like a servant, trembling before greatness.
But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain you. How much less this temple which I have built?
Then he begged God for mercy, for Israel's future sins, future failures, future tears.
When they sin against you, and when they return to you with all their heart, then hear in heaven and forgive.
It was one of the most powerful prayers ever prayed by a king. And God heard. That night the Lord appeared again.
I have heard your prayer and your supplication. I have consecrated this house. My eyes and my heart will be there perpetually.
1 Kings chapter 9, verse 3. Solomon's heart swelled. He had done it. Israel had a temple. The kingdom was strong. The nations watched in awe. News spread beyond Israel like fire. They said the king in Jerusalem spoke with wisdom like a river, endless, deep, shining. They said he could judge the hardest cases, explain mysteries, speak of plants and animals, give proverbs that pierced the heart. And then one day, royal banners appeared on the road. A foreign queen arrived, cloaked in wealth, surrounded by spices, gold, and servants. The Queen of Sheba. She had heard the rumors, but she did not trust rumors. She needed to see. She stood before Solomon and tested him with hard questions, and he answered every one of them, without panic, without confusion, without pride. And when she saw the order of his kingdom, the excellence of his servants, the worship, the glory, she lost her breath.
It was a true report. However, I did not believe the words until I came and saw with my own eyes. And indeed, the half was not told me. Your wisdom and prosperity exceed the fame of which I heard.
Then she said something even heavier.
Blessed be the Lord your God, who delighted in you, setting you on the throne, because the Lord has loved Israel forever.
1 Kings chapter 10, verse 9. The world was honoring Israel's God because of Solomon. That is what wisdom can do. It can make unbelievers stop and say, "Your God is real." But the story of Solomon does not end with applause, because success has a secret danger. It whispers, "You can handle life without God now." Solomon's kingdom grew massive: gold, horses, trade, wealth beyond counting. And then, so did something else. His compromises. He married foreign women, many of them. And Scripture says plainly what happened next. For it was so, when Solomon was old, that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God. 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 4. The wisest man in the world began to drift, not in one sudden betrayal, but in a slow, tragic turning. One altar became two, two became many, and the man who once asked God for an understanding heart began to live as if he could borrow wisdom without obeying wisdom's source. God warned him, and judgment came, not immediate destruction, but a fracture set in motion. The kingdom that looked unbreakable would one day split. Solomon had built the temple with his hands, but he had not guarded his heart with the same dedication. Solomon's life is like a scroll unrolled before every generation. It teaches, wisdom is a gift from God, but it must be carried with humility. Blessings can become burdens if they pull your heart away. You can build great things outwardly and still lose something inwardly. The greatest danger is not what you fight on the battlefield, but what you allow in your heart. And yet, Solomon's story still glimmers with hope, because Scripture preserves not only his rise, but the lessons his life leaves behind. A king who asked for wisdom, a king who built the temple, a king whose choices became a warning, and a king whose story points beyond himself to the one greater than Solomon, the perfect king, whose wisdom never fails.